There's time constraints. We have a person in the front row. This has to do with the subject that was just raised, tax income and financing. And just completed a study with my colleague Mick Dunphy, if I may promote our study, which showed that in the last 4 years, the Northwest Side has not done very well in the TIF game, drawing only about 10% of the expenditures in TIF revenues, whereas the central area has gotten about 48 to 50%. What changes and reforms to this city's TIF program would you advocate to make a more equitable spread of the money? We start with Alderman Arena.
Thank you. So the TIF program is a tool, all right? And like any tool, it can be used positively, it can be used negatively. So the problem with the TIF program is it was seen as a silver bullet to solve all economic woes in any neighborhood. And so 163 TIFs exist across the city. Almost 2/3 of the city is under a TIF. The problem with the TIF is not that we're underperforming. We're performing exactly where we are based on how our properties increment in value. That's the most important word in TIF. We increment at a lower pace, slower pace, than places like LaSalle Street. There's neighborhoods on the west side and the south side that have zero increment, but they have TIFs. So guess what? There's no money in those TIFs. There's no money to invest. And with the city's policy of that being the economic tool to revitalize neighborhoods, it's the wrong tool for certain neighborhoods. You don't need to incentivize an 18-story with $18 million of a tall building in Lakeview that has views of the lake. That will be built and rented on its own. The economy will move that. Okay, you don't need to incentivize somebody to locate on LaSalle Street. Businesses will come there because it's LaSalle Street. We're in a strata, some of the neighborhoods like ours, that has increment and needs to close that gap between the cost to build and the rental rates that are commanded out here, which are somewhere in the range of $15, maybe $20 a square foot. But if you need $30 a square foot in order to generate the revenue to cover the note, you need to help out a little bit. And that's what TIFs are designed to do. So we need to reform it, we need to close some on both ends and use different tools to revitalize these other neighborhoods.
Some of these TIFs, especially the ones that are in neighborhoods that obviously aren't blighted and don't need it. There's also issues with porting, and that means where if the money's not used or that they have the ability to actually move the money from one TIF to another as long as they're adjoining, and then they move it until they get into the TIF that they want so they can use the money for things like DePaul or Marriott. We need to utilize the money that we have there now to help get our pension funds under control. Going forward, we also need to have some restrictions on what the money can be used for and how our alderman or our city council is using that money. For example, we've got a project at 4901 West on Irving where it's going to require $2.5 million in TIF money to get it done. Well, there was a project on the table before that for a certain Fresh Market where it wasn't going to require any TIF money at all. So maybe that project possibly could have been the project to go forward, and then we could have used that money somewhere else in the Six Corners area or the Portage Park area. So we really have to take a look at how this money is being used and where they're putting this money.
So before my challenger speaks, he probably should know what he's talking about. Mike Boussis wanted TIF money to do an 65,000 square foot grocery store that would have torn down the building, vacated a city alley, and put truck traffic down Dakin Avenue and a loading dock across the street from residential homes. Now he's professed to be the defender of the quality of life and the single family life we have here. Yet he doesn't know that when that project was presented to me as a concept, I asked him to solve those problems. How do you get the Coke truck and the Pepsi truck and the bread truck and the meat truck to the back of your store that's in front of somebody's porch without killing their quality of life? So we're going to put money into a project that is roundly well received, as you saw in that meeting. Redevelop this parcel, do the first redevelopment for Six Corners in its entire history.
Thank
That's
you.
what we're gonna do.
I spoke to Mike Boussis and he said that it didn't require any TIF money, so maybe he was mistaken.
He said, she said, John.
Exactly, he said, he said. So, that project we could have worked on, but again, it was a project that needed to be presented to the community, discuss it, to see if there was a way to get those trucks where they needed to go. And again, that project was going to bring in an estimated $30 million a year in revenue to that store, or up to 200 jobs that would have brought into the community there. So it doesn't, and I'm not saying necessarily that was the project, because there really wasn't any kind of community meeting on it. There was a little sparring in the media with him and the business owner, and then it went dead. So I guess until we talk to both of them, I'd like to get the other side of the story to find out what actually